And everybody, we are live. Welcome to the 6th episode of The Rundown. I am Jeff Nepper, and I've got Alan Ray, co-founder of Integrate Live, here with me. And we're joined by, should we just call him the Dream Team, Alan? Is that...
like it.
Yeah. We've got Kudzai and Sean and Benson and Peter. You recognize them from last week's virtual workshop. Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Very good.
Hey, Sean.
All right, so here's the rules. For the next 60 minutes, no responding to emails, no messaging, no working over on the side. That's all right. We'll just call hands, and hands have to come up. Phones are on vibrate, and we are going to tell some stories. We're going to review last week's project. Kudzai is going to tell us a dad joke. Kudzai, should we just go ahead and get it out of the way and let you tell your joke?
Yeah, sure. So why did the Scarecrow win the award?
I don't know. Why did the Scarecrow win the award?
Because he was outstanding in his field.
Kudzai with the jokes. Well done, sir. Yeah, so Kudzai is officially a member of the Integrate Live community now. He told a dad joke.
Hey, Jeff.
What's up, Alan?
Do you know what is red and smells like white paint?
I have no idea.
Red paint.
It's terrible.
Can I go a bit meta here?
Yeah.
So when does a joke become a dad joke?
I don't know.
When it becomes apparent?
Well done, Peter. Well done.
Peter has to step up his game from last week. His wife told him so.
Was that a bad one last week?
She was watching the webinar from our house, and she said I had the worst dad joke of us all.
Oh.
So I've only been at that for 7 weeks, right? So it takes a bit of time getting up to speed.
You get a pass. You know, when you get to 10 weeks, you got to have your dad joke game on.
Yeah.
You haven't got there yet.
Well, congratulations on being a new father, Peter. Little boy, little girl. What?
Little boy. Thank you very much.
That's exciting.
Well, you know, Peter. Speaking of just newborns or little children, what did the baby PC say to his dad?
I don't know.
Dada.
Dada. I like it.
That's good. Oh, well, we have a lot to talk about from last week. Benson and I will fill in dad jokes. Benson, I feel like your and I's comedic timing is so good. We don't just need to go in order.
Yeah.
We'll find a place.
I'm more of like a brute force attack, right? I'm just like, I don't wait for the timing, and I just come in hard and just get it out of the way.
It's always fun to start off this way. But hey, big question. 2 weeks from now, I'm getting on an airplane. Alan's getting in his car. Who's going to ICC? And what is ICC? Okay, so Benson, Sean, myself, Alan, our community. Who's going to the Inductive Automation Ignition Community Conference? We are going to do something kind of cool. Alan and I have kind of talked about it. We haven't really announced it yet. We've got a little Airbnb rented down on Sutter Street, which I think is just a block from Fat Rabbit, maybe 2 blocks from Fat Rabbit. And we're going to designate, are we doing Monday or Wednesday, Alan? What's the Monday?
I thought we were doing Monday and Wednesday, but whatever works for you, man.
So it's going to be Monday and Wednesday, Integrate Live house. Now, listen, we're grown adults. We are past the point of making bad decisions. So we're going to keep it under control. From the hours of 8 to 8:15 on Wednesday night.
Are you saying 8 p.m. to 8:15 a.m.?
No, I'm saying lights out at 8 now. But we're gonna be hosting some get-togethers. So if you're part of the community and you want to hang out, we're gonna have.
What's up,
Benson? What's your role at ICC? I know you've got a lot going on with Opto.
I do, yeah. The Opto will be there with bells on. We've got some coordinated demos with some of the other vendors there, so that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be out on the show floor. And then I'll also be presenting along with Arlen Nipper and a few others, on the integration of OT data with Amazon's, it's called AWS SiteWise.
Oh, cool.
And this is in conjunction with an application that we're actually doing for the state of Indiana relative to energy management. So on last week's call, we talked a little bit about building KW and minimizing demand and so on. And that's what this project is about, is saving the manufacturers of the state of Indiana energy costs. I mean, I don't know what you guys are dealing with, but energy costs in California have gone through the roof. So it's certainly top of mind for a lot of manufacturers to, try to reduce that, that bottom line cost that, in today's world, it's so expensive just to get the electricity to make products. And we have the same thing here in our factory. So anyway, that's what I'll be talking about at ICC.
Oh, that's awesome.
You guys are going to be using the power monitoring, the Rio, or are you going to be using the Epic?
We're using both. So yeah, we'll use the Rio EMU, which of course will you can connect to a 3-phase, up to 600 volts directly to the device, and MQTT that energy data right back up to a broker. But we'll also have some applications where in a distribution panel, we may have 3 or 4 loads off that DP. And so in that case, we'll put an Epic with 4 power monitoring modules in there. It's all the same. It all comes out MQTT messages, just the same, whether it's a Rio or a Rio EMO or power monitoring modules. It's pretty cool. And it all flows into Ignition, which then flows into AWS SiteWise and any other application. Canary Historian is a classic example. I have a dashboard. Actually, the dashboard behind me on that screen there is historical data about the building that I'm in right now.
Very
all
cool.
through MQTT.
Very cool. And so state of Indiana, I don't know that, some of the audience might know about what's going on there. Why don't you take a couple minutes and just get us all up to speed on what state of Indiana's done?
Okay, so in short, there happens to be a lot of federal dollars available for a lot of different states to for infrastructure spending. So part of this is some of the recent bills that were passed and so on. So there's really a couple different options that any state can do to utilize these funds. For example, some may put in new street lamps and sidewalks, but the state of Indiana is a massive manufacturing base. And so where they saw the money best spent was to help their manufacturers reduce costs from an energy standpoint, but at the same time, provide them a stepping stone into digital transformation projects. Okay. And that sounds like a lot, right? But as we've always said, when you start your DT, your digital transformation journey at any facility or any manufacturing plant or any business, start small, get a win, find some pain point within the manufacturing facility, target that using the right tools, which is what Integrate Live is all about, using the right tools in the right way, and we're going to go take care of these energy costs right away and get a win. But the technologies that we're using to do this are the same technologies that I might connect to a machine to get, say, OEE status, or connect to some process to be able to monitor it and do quality and send the data up to Aperio and understand what's happening in an organization. But at the end of the day, a lot of folks, especially when they're doing DT, they get decision paralysis. They're like, well, where do I start, right? Yeah. And so this is a way for us to go tackle energy management or energy monitoring and cost reduction, but be able to take that same set of tools and expand it to other areas in the manufacturing facility, find another pain point, tackle that, get a win, tackle another one, and so on. And before you know it, you're using digital transformation technologies to run your business better. So because it is federal dollars that flow into the state is actually subsidizing that initial starter kit, if you will. It's kind of an I-4.0 in a box, Industry 4.0 in a box. So you put the box in, you start collecting some data, you move it into various applications, and you start getting some wins right away.
That's awesome. So if I'm a manufacturer in Indiana, I can basically get this IoT box project for free. Is that essentially?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that and the ignition licenses and the site-wise up to a year. It's all subsidized for a year, and if you're seeing value, then you can continue the program. If you don't, then obviously you're not committed to extending the program. But you still got some pretty terrific hardware that's sitting in your plant that you get to keep.
Well, I think it's what's interesting about this panel is, and I think Jeff hit it on the head, right? It's that everybody on this call today, as far as, you know, Opto, Canary, Hive, and Aperio, can actually be that starting point for digital transformation out of the box. You don't have to worry about going and modeling your data. You don't have to worry about figuring out, okay, how do I clean it and do all this stuff, right? Opto, you can literally drop a Rio or an Epic into your process, connect it to legacy equipment, get it into the system, and get it right to a broker. From there, Canary can subscribe to it, and now you have a historian. Aperio can subscribe to it, and now you've got actual machine learning off of the raw data, and HiveMQ is the magical piece in the middle that gives us that broker that is so easy to connect. And it's so fascinating to me to think about the ease of what we are able to do with the technology that's available to us today, right? I mean, there's a handful of PLCs, Phoenix Contact, a couple others that, yeah, you can, from the source, you can publish to a broker. And that, when you can get to that point, we talk about it all the time, right? That single source of truth. Well, if I can publish from my IO directly to the broker, and then I can send it to Aperio through Hive and send it to Canary, and I can do it at a cost that is a fraction of what I'm doing other control system stuff and projects at, that's the success that you're talking about, Vincent. That's that quick win to get you to actually showing the people that are having to approve the funds to continue. That's the value that you show them that takes you to the next step.
Yeah, you're right on the money. And another key aspect of this is, yes, today for the state of Indiana, we are moving the data up to AWS SiteWise. But the tools that were installed in the plant, which is basically the i4 in a box, works just as well with Azure, or it works just as well with whatever platform you decide that you want to use. As long as it abides by the standard technologies and principles that we've been discussing on these Integrate Lives for months, you know, the same technology tools allow the facilitation, the democratization of that data to whatever application you want. So you're not locked in. And I think that's a pretty big key for a lot of customers as they're trying to figure out, where do they go? Do they have to go pick a cloud vendor? I mean, think of all the folks that picked, Google Cloud, GCP, and then suddenly you're in a bit of a bind. With these technologies, if done right, if you want to move to GCP and switch over to Azure or switch over to AWS or build your own, those are all possible because you're using standard technologies.
Yeah. We're excited. I can't wait to hang out with you again.
It's been a while.
Well, it's, Vincent and I celebrated the Avalanche win by escaping out of downtown Denver a couple of weeks ago to avoid that all. But Sean, are you going to? You'll be at ICC. When are you headed out, and what's going on there?
Yeah, looking forward to it. No, I'll be getting there Monday, and we're got a nice new display we're going to set up there. I think we're really close to the entrance to the auditorium, so we're just really anxious to be out there talking with the the ignition community, and getting them up to speed on what's new with Canary and learning more about some of our other technology partners, what they've been up to. It's always a great time getting caught up with people. And, we're really excited to get out there.
Yeah, and you're bringing quite the team with you, I believe. Yeah.
There'll be Kyle Kensinger, who has been on a few of these Integrate Live sessions. Yep. We're going to have Ken Wyant, one of our senior engineers. He'll be along with us. We also have a new guy, Clark, who is coming along he's going to be part of more of our sales marketing team. He's just kind of getting his feet wet. So we thought it'd be nice to bring him along and let everybody meet the new guy. become more of a familiar face around the
I
community.
swear, Sean, that you said our failed marketing team. I thought that's what you said, and I looked at Jeff to see his reaction, but then I realized, oh, that must not have been what you said.
No, I did not say that, but sorry, Jeff, if I,
No, I'm just trying to figure. Alan's throwing some shade, and I don't quite understand why. But.
No, I honestly, that's what I thought I heard, and I'm like, I look at Jeff, and I'm like, did you respond? No, I must have not said that.
It's because it's 114 degrees in Bakersfield. So
Yeah,
it's right.
That's right. His eardrums are. I'm looking at our sponsor banner across the bottom of the screen. I know Software Toolbox is going to be at ICC. Canary is going to be at ICC. I was just talking with Graham and Lenny this morning. They've got their tickets booked. They've bought their ticket. They're there. Opto's there. Kepware's there. Alan, I don't remember from Dave and Ira. Is Phoenix there?
I want to say Dave's going to be there, but I may be mixing it up with somebody else that I had a conversation with, because I talked with Dave multiple times last week. And I swear we talked about ICC, but
we did too.
Talking to a lot of people about ICC.
All right.
I talked to Ira last week. Ira and I had a great conversation, and he mentioned that Dave was expected to attend.
All right, so we're going 6 for 6. Common denominator. I love it. We'll get to hang out a good bit. Kuzai, you're in Munich. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
You're probably staying in Munich, although I have a feeling you wouldn't mind coming to California and warming up for a couple days.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be doing a presentation, a virtual presentation. So in a way, I'm going to be there virtually. Yet to confirm the dates with regards to that. So yeah, excited to be a part of it.
Okay, well, hey, walk us through, Kuzai, if you don't mind. I don't know about the rest of the audience, but the very first time I saw you, you were doing demos kind of on your own, building a YouTube channel. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't know you that well. I'd like to know more about you. How did you get into automation? What made you start a YouTube channel in the first place?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's an interesting story, I would like to think, at least. So I originally started my career in the embedded systems design space straight out of college, and then I went into a bit of web application development, and then from there I went into industrial automation. So for me, the moment I started working in the industrial automation space, there were some things that became very clear to me that this had to change. You know, from the moment you walk into a factory, you realize that there's a lot of manual activities going on. So it just seemed ridiculous to me to see like people walking around carrying papers, taking notes down and measuring things. Coming from the software and internet world, I would have imagined that already manufacturing was advanced to such an extent that that's already happening. So I was really surprised to see that that's exactly what was going on. And at that moment, I knew that this is an industry that is up for change. Change is definitely coming. And as I started to research and try to find out exactly about how the digital transformation could come about in the manufacturing industry, I realized that there wasn't really that much of practical content out there that could help me understand how that could work. And I was actually fortunate enough that the first system integration company that I joined was an Opto 22 distributor in South Africa. And that kind of gave me a smooth on-ramp into PLCs, you know, coming from dealing with embedded systems. It was easy for me to really understand the hybrid kind of nature of the it was the R1 controller. So that was before the Groove Epic and all the other new cool stuff that Opto 22 is bringing. So a part of it, of what I went on to investigate, I owe it a lot to the Opto 22 platform, because it gave me that platform to kind of try out different ideas, because it was an open platform. And as they started to bring in things like your REST API, Node-RED. It's something that really excited me to actually dig further into exactly how this whole thing could be. And for me, the best way to kind of investigate that was to share. So, like, as you would know, teaching by sharing is the best way to really get a grasp, a hold of concepts. So, because I knew that if I was an engineer struggling with understanding how IT could actually be incorporated into OT, then rest assured there's thousands other engineers who are in the same position as me. So I thought that would certainly be an interesting content, field of content to really explore. So I then started a YouTube channel. So before that, I was actually just doing articles, and then I started a YouTube channel. And when I started a YouTube channel, I hadn't really packaged it into a company before, because I thought that maybe this is just something that I'm going to be doing just to teach and just to grow a YouTube channel. But the more I did it, the more I understood that there's actually an opportunity here to actually build a community around this and inspire others to get on board. So this is when I then packaged it into Industry 4.0 TV, and then started a podcast, and then that led me to so I actually interviewed. So I was already using HiveMQ, by the way, like since 2014 or 16, like in the early days when they actually put out the first. So I was already using HiveMQ, but I met Dominic, was my guest on the podcast. I think about a year or so ago. And then from there, our relationship with HiveMQ began. And then I started working with them on a freelance basis, and creating content around MQTT. And then after that, I joined them permanently. So I like to think of my job as like I've got the perfect role, because I literally crafted my position at HiveMQ. So I get to do whatever it is that I was doing, but now the only difference is that I'm doing it at HiveMQ, because I was already talking about HiveMQ. I was already talking about MQTT Sparkplug, because I really believe that like it's got that transformative power to really influence how systems are integrated in the industry. So that's basically, in a nutshell, that's my story, and I'm really excited to be a part of the community.
Oh, that's awesome. So there's just a perfect example of if you believe in what you're doing, right, all the pieces just will follow. You did the work, you saw a need, you added value, and now you've got your dream job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his middle name, by the way, is spelt correctly.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's your middle name?
So Jeff, you don't know my middle name?
I don't.
Care to guess?
Is it? No, I cannot.
So it's actually Alan.
Is it really?
And it's spelled Allen.
That makes perfect sense. Alan, I know you've got 1,000 questions, and I'm betting Peter's going to get a lot of them on the Aperio side. You want to kick us off on project review and dig into what we didn't talk about last week?
Yeah, let's just jump in and really kind of give a high level overview of what we did. And so the concept that we approached was really from the Opto 22 lab being an existing process that is in place running. It's been in place running, and now you want to start to take advantage of, okay, yeah, we've got the data where we can start to publish the data somewhere. What do we do with it? How do we take advantage of machine learning now that we have this capability of, and this is a very important point here that we didn't get to really hit on last week, but you can do this, right? You can get an Epic or a Rio, specifically the Epic, zero chassis, put it in place, connect it to all your IO, and then publish it to a HiveMQ broker, meaning not just good, but best in class security, meaning that your no inbound connections are coming in. Everything is outbound. It's meeting the Purdue model. You've got segmentation built directly into the Epic. You've got a firewall built into that thing. And so now you have an OT environment that's secured, legacy. You put one device in, allow that device to run Ignition. Now Ignition can connect to all of your control system.
Can I just real quick ask just a question for my own?
Yeah.
So the Groove Epic, just the controller, right? Not all of
IO,
the additional IO cards.
Yep.
Basically, that can fit on top of what type of legacy PLCs, or how many, like what type of scalability? And maybe Benson, I should be asking you, if I'm a factory, I've got 1,000 or 3,000 IO points that I want to get out of my OT environment securely. Do I need one Groove Epic? Do I need 3?
It's a good question, because what's going to happen is that's the zero base Epic right there that Vincent's showing on his screen. And it literally is just the processor, power supply. You get all of that industrial 4.0 magic that comes in the Epic. So you get the 2 isolated NIC cards, you get the firewall piece, you get OpenVPN, you get the port forward, and you get all that magic that makes the Epic so good in that device. You also get Ignition. Ignition is very critical in this, because what Ignition gives you is all of the drivers you need to talk to that legacy PLC, the Siemens, the Allen Bradley, the Modbus TCP, all those things, right? And here is the constraint. This is what your question is. The constraint comes to resources within that Epic. Now, Benson did something fabulous last year, which was added another whole gig to the PR2s, right? So now you have a 2 gig processor that you can do way more than you could before. But I don't know, Benson, if we know what that actual hack count is, or where you're going to start to hit that constraint of actual resources within the Epic. Do you know what that is by any chance? Have you guys done any testing?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, it's a complicated question, because it depends on which drivers you're using and which ones are more CPU intensive. For the state of Indiana, we're doing exactly this. We're putting in a zero chassis Groove Epic, what we call the PR2, and that comes with 4 gigs of RAM and a 30 gig industrial SSD, and we're running full Ignition there. Mm-hmm. And we're getting anywhere, depending if it's a bunch of Modbus scanning, that generally takes a little bit longer, or a little bit more CPU, but we're getting anywhere from 6 to 10, 11,000 tags through one Epic. Okay. So generally that's pretty robust. And then the beauty of, and again, the state of Indiana project, if a given manufacturer starts to bump up against that ceiling of capability, it is a quad core ARM processor, so it's a pretty stout little CPU. But if they go beyond that, they can easily take the Ignition license that they applied to this device, and this is full Ignition, and they can put it on, say, another PC or another server or whatever. In other words, they preserve their cost, their investment. And then this can be doing other tasks as well. You can slap it on a rack with regular IO modules, or do some other pre-processing or whatever. But yeah, you're right on the money.
So here's where I was going with it. A couple years ago, when I hit Benson up about the port forwarding and, hey, let's build this into this thing. And my vision was always based around the problem I was trying to solve with Air Energy, which was, we've got legacy PLCs and PLC panels that I can't protect, right? East to west, I can't protect that. If somebody was to get into my network, they're going to get access to those PLCs potentially. I mean, it's better now, but the point is that my vision was always, I want a zero base in every legacy PLC panel All the I/O from that zero base goes to the Epic. Ignition runs locally. I have a touch screen panel that goes on the panel that handles my local HMI without having to have a PC there. So I don't have to worry about updates and all that stuff. And then I lock that thing down. It's MQTT out. It's no incoming ports. I've got all the security. It's all physical security, and it's awesome. So that's kind of the vision that I've always had with it. But here's the beauty of that. So if you've got a legacy system and that system has been built 20 years ago, the methodology around tag naming, the modeling is non-existent, right? So you have an OT environment, this legacy that has been there for years. No one thought about AI and machine learning when they built those systems. So now you have the ability to put a low-cost device into that system, connect it to your devices, and publish it to the cloud. Well, a couple years ago, I had a very interesting conversation with Arlen Nipper where we were talking about his injector. So he built, ServiceLink has an injector for the AWS and Azure and all the different methodologies so you can take data right from Ignition and get it right to a cloud.
Right.
And Arlen was sharing with me that the problem is the data is so unstructured, it's not modeled, the tag names are terrible, nobody can derive value from just getting the tags to the cloud.
Right.
This right here is where I think Aperio steps into play, because what Aperio does is it doesn't matter what your tag names are. It doesn't matter what your modeling is. What Aperio can do is just get me the data, the raw data, and we will send it through these 13, 16 different machine learning engines, and we'll be able to give you health and quality and even cyber. Think about cyber, and Peter can talk about this too, but think about cybersecurity at a device level. So we currently have a lot of different companies that are coming into play today that are putting in devices that are monitoring that 4 to 20 signal to see if there's any manipulation happening prior to the PLC. Well, every single device, if you're monitoring the raw data, develops a fingerprint. So you get a digital fingerprint of those devices, and you can actually know whether things are starting to be manipulated or changed based off of that fingerprint. So now you have a level of cybersecurity, you've got data quality, you've got process health, you've got the ability to be able to monitor critical data and know when things are starting to go a certain direction, put thresholds in. So really, the high level of what we did last week: existing process, legacy equipment, legacy data, get it to a broker. What do you do with it once it's at a broker? Canary can just subscribe to that data, bring it in. Flow can contextualize that data. But Aperio can also just take that raw data and start truly giving you value for what you have now today. You don't have to get a data scientist and model it and clean it and do all those things, right? So with that, I think I'll throw it over to Peter and let Peter kind of talk about the goodness of once the data is there and the machine engines are started, what does somebody have that what's that value that somebody's going to be able to extract from that?
Yeah, totally. So building on some of the points that were made earlier on in terms of successful digital transformation, it is absolutely crucial to go for the fast successes. Not that they're necessarily easy, but if you have visibility into a quick success and then work from there. So what we actually enable with Aperio is that there doesn't have to be any change in any part of the OT, but we plug Aperio in and suddenly the customer is one step closer to having transformed whatever part of the business we're talking about into a more digitally and data-driven business. And this is something that's crucial for us because we've seen, I think all of us have seen that it's difficult to get new stuff, let's say, into large-scale industrial corporations. If it's hardware, it's slightly more difficult. If it's exchanging stuff that's currently in place, it's even more difficult. So we really wanted to go in the other direction and say, we want to take what is already there because it's been in place for decades. It's probably going to be in place for decades, and that's what we have to be able to work with. So that is really the fundamental idea behind Aperio, that given where the operation is today, that's our starting point, and that's the point from which we start generating these successes that then come in. Two more points. So a bit of my background. I was so before Aperio, I was running the venture capital unit of a large Northern European energy company, and I came across thousands of companies, and then suddenly I came across Aperio, and I saw this, and I'm like, wow, this is, everyone was talking about digital transformation at the time, and everyone was struggling with it, and I'm like, this is such a crucial component to reflect this fact that there is an operating environment in place. Most likely, no one would really like to change that up, at least not overnight, at least not in a very significant manner. They want to go step by step. And here is one of the keys to it. And then everything becoming data, everyone talking about it, but everyone also struggling to apply it. Then when I saw Aperio, I thought, well, this is at least a mission that seems so difficult on the one hand, but so rewarding if we get it right on the other hand, that I ended up saying, you know what, I was at a company called Ørsted before. Dear Ørsted, I love you guys, but I'm gone, because this is an opportunity that I have to pursue. So that was sort of obviously not similar to, not like Code Size, but not also dissimilar in the way that we were looking at this space sort of from the outside in, or from adjacent positions, and then saying, okay, now it's time to make the jump. And so that was really the driving force, and it's back to this, like, how do we make digital transformation manageable, achievable, attainable, and all these things. And I think unlocking the data, now it gets a bit buzzwordy, and apologies for that, but sort of really unlocking the data is just a part of it that cannot be ignored.
Yeah, Benson, you speak about democratizing data. We hear all the time on the flow side about breaking free those data silos. It's, this theme keeps coming up over and over again, right? Kuzai, I was just curious, as Alan was talking about, and Alan, earlier on, you used the term not having to model. I believe when you're using that term, you're talking about on the backside, right? Like having to create contextualized structure to do machine learning on top of.
It's data science, yeah.
Right. If I want to bring the term model a little closer to the edge, Kuzai, do you? I'm completely putting you on the spot, and you may have to say no comment, and I understand if you do. But it struck me that the MQTT broker would be an interesting place to be able to inject context or to force data into a bit of a model. Of course, it already has been with the Sparkplug B to a certain extent, right? But do you ever see Hive or MQ, or even just the MQTT broker in general, being a place where in transit we could add more context to data?
Yeah, so I think there's certainly an opportunity to add some context to the data while it's in transit. Although ideally, I would like to believe that the best place to really model your data would be right at the source of the data, because that's really where you've got what maybe I would like to think of as people who are qualified, like you've got your automation engineers who understand where to pick those discrete components and kind of like put them into like a model and then push it out to the edge, such that whenever it gets to the other end, like the IT, it's already it's already an object that can be interacted with in its fullness. Mm-hmm. And so all you need to do is just to chuck it into an analytics system, although there is an opportunity to like maybe enrich it on the broker itself. So there certainly is an opportunity to do that at the broker.
Yeah, I see it as potentially just, not putting more than 30 seconds of thought into it. I see it more about adding site contextualization that at the edge wouldn't be known for an enterprise level, saying, hey, site A, site B, site C, right? But here now I am bringing this or rolling this up to a second tiered broker and maybe adding some extra context. Just a thought that hit me. Don't want to derail.
Yeah, the complexity there becomes the decoupling, right? So now if I need to decouple from, say, AWS and go to Azure, can I move that model with me, or is it proprietary to AWS, or is it, and so then it gets a little more complicated. But ultimately, I think that part of that onboarding for that modeling at the edge is going to happen probably down in that ignition tax off space of I'm subscribing to my data, and now I am modeling it and publishing it out, right? And so
that's kind of what we're doing with the state of Indiana. Keep bringing up this particular project, and we're doing it elsewhere as well. But your point, Jeff, and to Kudzai's as well, is if we can model the data right down at the edge, we should probably consider doing that. For the purposes of this exercise that we did last week, we literally took tags right out of a controller and streamed it up to Aperio, and Peter was able to do some interesting things with that data, meaning we can do it with raw data. However, in the case of the state of Indiana, we are running full ignition here. So what we actually do is do the modeling right in ignition. It's pretty simple. It's called UDTs. So now what I've done is I'm collecting a bunch of raw data, and then within the ignition running on the device, I model that into a UDT, and that becomes the model. And in the case of AWS, we send the whole model up through the broker, and then it's ingested on the SiteWise side, and you don't have to build any models up on AWS SiteWise. They automatically appear. And then we take that model and we instantiate assets from each of those. So now we have a model, and we create assets for different locations, different devices, or whatever, and all the work is done, but it was done at the edge. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You can start off with raw data and say, whoa, this is pretty cool. Now I think I want to model this data. And it starts to inform you about how you're going to model the data based on who is going to use it. So again, the notion of different steps.
If you ever get to take advantage of that, if you ever get to send the UDT to SiteWise, you need to email Arlen Nipper and say thank you. He has done incredible heavy lifting with AWS and Azure to get them to accept that UDT structure. And now that they do, I'm telling you, it is a game changer for us in our industry, because now we can create that model once, send it, and that model structure, that single source of truth from the edge, stays all the way true, all the way to SiteWise. And that was not possible even a year ago. And Arlen's done an incredible amount of work to get us to the place where we are. And so I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves often, but man, that's been incredible amount of work there.
Hey, Doug Miller just chatted in a question or a thought. He's excited that we've actually gone down this little bit of a path. And he's saying, when you have different systems with information about an asset, MES, ERP, edge device itself, do you see MQTT Sparkplug B as the bridge to inject data into the data model? Each system being the source of truth for its bits.
So my opinion on this is, one of the beauties of Sparkplug B and MQTT in general is you can publish any data on any topic, right? And so this idea of modeling at the edge is simply encapsulating the whole notion of the model, essentially, which represents some physical device. And you can use MQTT for that, or you can use it just for raw data. Yeah. So really, the MQTT Sparkplug B helps us organize the data relative to the namespace and so on. But down off the namespace, off the group ID, edge node ID, device ID, which you guys saw, I put together on the data stream that was going up to Aperio. Once that's set, there's all kinds of other stuff you can do on the back end of that namespace. So what Sparkplug B really does is help you line all that up. So when it shows up on the subscriber side, you have a pretty clear picture of where it was coming from, where that data originated. And then within the UDT is all that is the model itself. So could you do that kind of modeling in UDTs absent of MQTT? Potentially, yes. You're just going to have, a fair about, you're going to have more heavy lifting is what it boils down to.
I think also, go ahead, Jeff. So there's this interesting concept around this, right? So we spent, the last company I worked at, we spent millions of dollars of putting in an enterprise bus, and it was a decent bus. They used RabbitMQ, and it was great. And it cost money, the licensing, all that stuff. But think about MES, ERP, SQL, all these different places where you have data and you want to consolidate it into, whether it's machine learning or data science or whatever. Ignition, think of how seamlessly Ignition can communicate to SQL, MES, right? And so now, if you have the capability of being able to leverage Ignition as that consolidator of data that can then publish it to a single broker, or even better yet, consolidate that data into a model, a UDT in Ignition, and then publish it. It's a fascinating concept for me, and there's a tension there that I felt of, are we cramming a square peg into a round hole, right? Are we taking Ignition and using it for something that's really not designed for, not meant to be? But when you start to add MQTT into the mix, and you start to see what the capabilities are of trying to consolidate data and get it to a contextualization and published securely to be usable, man, I think Sparkplug-B opens up doors that we didn't have access to before. And Ignition is a tool. I think you can use other tools too. I don't think it has to be Ignition, but I just think to Doug's point, like, yeah, if you can start to consolidate that data together, whether it's Canary, Flow, it can be Ignition, it can be all these. We have all these different opportunities now that can draw this data together and then publish it. Canary, you guys have, like, your MQTT infrastructure is amazing. Like, we had, I don't know, Sean, you may know now, I don't know how many tags we had at Era, but I think 14 million tags, 15 million tags, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And it's just rock solid. The updates are easy. Every patch night, when we used to do patch nights in the past with our software that we had before Canary, it was all night. So your historian team would be up all night getting the system back up, and then they would have to go home half day the next day because they've been up all night. We don't have to do anything with Canary. We don't have connectors. We don't have all these other little complexities of pieces, right? It's update the system, reboot it, and it just works. And so I think that we have so much opportunity with data now, and with Sparkplug-B, kind of that glue that's going to help us bring it all together and get it to the places that we can take advantage of it. So,
and there's one other, if I may interject here, there's one other really key component of MQTT and Sparkplug-B that sometimes we tend to forget. Even I forgot it a moment ago, and that is this notion of decoupling. So today, if I want MES to talk to ERP and talk to OT and so on, I'm creating a lot of one-to-one tightly coupled connections between all those systems. And that ends up being a very brittle system. So if one connector goes down or whatever, it's really difficult to troubleshoot. But the idea of Sparkplug-B and with MQTT is I now decoupled those applications. So now MES will acquire or subscribe to a certain data set and perhaps even publish into the same broker. Same with your ERP system, same with your OT data. So now we have coalesced around this idea of a decoupled architecture that makes it much, much easier to maintain and to expand. And we're not creating those one-to-one connections between all these various software components. We're creating everything connecting to a broker and have a decoupled architecture. That it's just so critical as we spin up another piece of software. We're not tying directly to the device or directly to MES. We're going to the broker and getting it. So the decoupling is a huge factor of MQTT.
All right, let me close in some thoughts and we'll shift. I think Doug used an interesting term, and let me just say that Jeff Knepper's not qualified. My opinion on this is no greater than anybody else's. It's just my opinion. But Doug used an interesting term, just in the fact that he wrote data model. And what does Sparkplug do? It forces from the edge. It forces towards a model. But what I think is missing just a little bit in our conversation is the concept of multiple site, multiple operation, multiple assets at scale. And so the larger our operation gets, a global operation, the more important that we allow for micro information models or data models. Because at the end of the day, if we're successful as an organization, we will acquire assets. And when we acquire assets, we want to keep those assets running and find immediate value. And so finding ways to be flexible in our enterprise data models, but allowing for standardization in local micro data models is going to be key here. I'm going to look to our partner sponsor Flow Software because that's the problem they solve. And it's
Lost you, Jeff.
oh no.
Now you're back.
Back.
How about now? Back?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. How far ago?
You said Flow solves that problem.
So I think the key here is that you use a technology like Flow to adapt and allow for these micro data models that are working to bring in new assets and use the model, because we haven't even talked about time yet. The concept of time inside of the information model. It's not just data. It's also conceptualization around what's a shift, what's a day, what's a year. And the larger our organization gets, the more definitions we have around that. So the idea that we actually treat the Sparkplug model as a node in the greater data model, and then have something at the highest level that acts as that analytics hub or that data model hub that can consume all of those models and then feed out to our different platforms, our Aperios, our AWSs, contextualized, standardized, universal model at that highest level, but allow those micro models to work as they should. That secondary level, I think, is still the piece that's being defined and missing. But we could talk about this all day, and we're coming close to an end, and we've got a lot of Aperio questions. Peter, I'm going to shift and throw you a question. I heard Alan said, hey, I'm bringing in Aperio machine learning, and I'm just thinking, well, we're going to be predicting downtime. Right? So talk to us about Aperio's focus on machine learning around, I guess, maybe even statistical data. And then Alan, you go nuts, pepper Peter with questions. We need to hear more about Aperio in this conversation.
Definitely. So I'll try and keep my answers short. What we do is we tell you exactly what you're dealing with in real time. And in there is some predictive power, because you will see something happen that will materialize as a problem down the line. We see it right then and there. And then we say, this is what you're dealing with. Then an operator can say, great, we will solve. If we hadn't solved, we would have run into a problem. So we don't do any prediction, not at all, because in many cases, there's enough information in real time to provide the operators with what they need to know to avoid issues in the future.
So when I was seeing some statistical process control elements, and that's because you're saying, hey, if we equip the decision makers with better information around their data in real time, they are going to be the predictive piece as subject matter experts to take that action immediately.
So yes and no. I mean, fundamentally yes, but this doesn't mean that there's no place for predictive maintenance, for example. It just means that the here and now, the real time is understood as well as it can be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And Peter, why don't you tell us, because one of the things that we've been working really hard on is trying to come up with a model, really leveraging the model that HiveMQ has kind of shown us, paved the way for, right? Why don't you help us understand what somebody, if they wanted to try this out of the box, like hey, I've got a handful of data that I can get to a broker. How do I get that to Aperio? What does somebody have to do to be able to start using Aperio? And then what does it take if they don't have the history, and what does it take if they do have the history?
Right. So setting it up is super easy. For now, I would have to defer to the delivery team that would actually spin up the instance that could be used and connected to. But in terms of the second part of the question on history versus no history, basically, if there's history, if there's enough history, it means that the models become operational immediately, and then they can, with the live data, start the process of monitoring, analyzing, and providing insights into the data quality. And that's actually an interesting part, because that would give the user very immediately an understanding of how are we doing currently? What is the level of data quality? Do we in general have trustworthy data? Is it less trustworthy? Is it fluctuating? And so on. If there's no history, obviously the models need to build up the history before it'll start generating insights. The good thing is they do this automatically. So the user just connects and waits, and then the system will let them know when they're ready. So in either case, there's no configuration required in terms of model parameters and the like. It's more a matter of how quickly can you satisfy your curiosity into the state of your data quality.
Now I'll come back around, and so one of the things that if you want to try this, you can find Aperio on LinkedIn. I believe it's Greg at aperio.io. Is that right?
Greg,
AI.
all week. Hey, who wanted that free trial? Who wanted that free trial?
Yeah.
Greg at aperio.ai. That's right.
Yeah. So email Greg, tell him you want to use it. They'll get you set up. They'll get you you can pass, I don't remember the tag count, but you can pass so many tags, you're going to get a dashboard and be able to actually see the thing work. And so with that, Canary, what are some of the ways that Canary can easily export data so that people can not just take advantage of hey, we're going to get our data there and then we're going to wait for 3 weeks before we can actually see it happen. What's it take for Canary to get that data extracted and get into Aperio so that you can take immediate action on what is happening within your system?
Yeah, that's a good question, Alan. Now, when it comes to getting data into Aperio, there's probably a couple ways that we would look at that. A very common way is our API, our READ API. It's a web and .NET API. So, this allows, basically a get data method call from Aperio, and we'll feed that data in just through the API. It's pretty simple. Now, a lot of our other customers, to get data into other systems, we have our MQTT publisher, so you can publish data right out of our system. So it preserves all the modeling and everything, and they can just have that data be sent right to a MQTT broker, so it's available to be consumed by other tools. We support Spark-Plug-B and JSON message types, with that, and so there's it's pretty robust. You can obviously filter out certain data sets and makes it very easy to just get the data out that you need. Even exporting to CSV, we have an Excel add-in tool as well, but I would say the API is primarily what we were going to use with Aperio. I think that's the most efficient way.
Yep, I know we're coming up on time, Jeff, but I do want to say one more thing to actually, I want to thank Doug, Todd Asinger. There's a couple people that are really fighting hard with our vendors and and the people that we're starting to have the conversation that we're not going to accept not having Sparkplug B. And I think that, Todd and Doug and yourself and Vincent and these people who are really pushing us to be able to do exactly what Vincent talked about earlier, right? The decoupling, hey, if I've got a system, I want that system to publish to a broker so that all the other things that need it can just subscribe to it. And I want to stop interlinking these systems so that I don't have this coupling together, this tight coupling that causes all kinds of problems for integration. So thank you, Doug, Todd. I can think a handful of people. Arlen has been on the forefront of that for years. There's a bunch of people that are doing that. And I know I'm not saying your name, but I'm thanking you for the work that you've done there.
It's kind of like a drug. Once you've started using Sparkplug B, or maybe Sparkplug B is not it long term, right? But just the concept of a decoupled architecture. Once you plug and play, once people start using it, it is an addiction. Benson, you know my story, and I'll share it publicly. I've suffered from that addiction. I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around. And with that, we need to go ahead and put this episode of The Rundown in the books. Thank you so much. We will see you at ICC. And as always, thank you for your commitment to this community, because together we are better. Everyone have a great day.
See you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.